Once your application is approved, you then want to set up your bank accounts. Bank accounts can be set up with just a couple of clicks. First, let's go to Cash Management and go to your checking account. Edit the account that you wish to enable. You can enable more than one account. Click on the Edit link next to the account that you wish to enable. You want to check for a few things. You want to make sure that you have your account number, the routing number, and your branch ID. Go to your check printing tab. Highly recommend that you use the address below. This is the address that will print out on your checks. You also want to make sure you have a signature uploaded for any checks that are printed out and mailed out on behalf of you by CSI. And then go to your payment provider tab. And on the payment provider tab, you'll want to click on Enable this account for vendor payments powered by CSI. Enter your starting check number. You want to make sure you use a different check number than the check number that you use for your standard printing of checks through Sage Intacct. And if this is the only account that you've enabled, then you want to make sure that you select this one as your rebate account. So that way, any rebates that you have coming to you will be automatically deposited into your account. And then click on Save. And then click on Save. So now that your bank is all set up, it'll take just a few days for the bank to be approved. Banks go through a penny test, so to validate that this is an actual working bank account, you'll see a micro debit and credit to your bank, and then it'll go to approve. And at that point, you can start making payments. The next thing you want to do is set up your vendors. Again, setting up vendors is just a few clicks. There are a number of ways to set up vendors. You can do a mass update to send over all vendors by just going into the subscription. Go to Company, Subscriptions, scroll down to Outbound Payment Services, click on View Options, and click on Configure for Vendor Payments Powered by CSI. And then scroll down to the vendor setup. You can opt to enable all vendors for service and then automatically enable new vendors. So if you enable the first option, all your vendors will be sent over to CSI that are in the United States. If the second option will send over only new vendors that you create, and then click on Save. The other way to set up vendors, if you want to go through your vendors and pick and choose the vendors that you want to send, you can go to Accounts Payable, go to Vendors. You'll come to your list of vendors. You'll see a list of vendors that you have. You'll notice that you'll see provider status. These are all the vendors that have already been enabled. If you wanted to enable these vendors that have not been enabled, you can go through and select them and do a bulk subscribe by just simply clicking on Subscribe to CSI. Once you click on that, you'll get an alert that says, are you sure you want to perform this action? 7 records have been selected, and you can go ahead and select those, and then notice that these 7 vendors are now updated and they've been enabled. If you go into a vendor record directly by clicking on Edit, you can also just simply go into the Payment Provider tab and select Enable CSI. So if you're adding a brand new vendor, you would just go to the Payment Provider tab and select Enable. So again, it's super easy to create vendors. So once your vendors are created, they're likely to default to check payment method. CSI will perform a check on the vendors. They will check to see if the vendors are within their network. That takes approximately 2 to 3 days. If the vendors are within their network, that means that they accept virtual card, and then your payment method will flip to virtual card. If they're not within network, then CSI will reach out to them. They'll send them a self-enrollment form so they can choose what payment method that they want to select. They can choose ACH or virtual card. And again, they automatically all default to check. So if you wanted to see a vendor's payment method, you can go into the view mode of a vendor and go to the Payment Provider tab and see the preferred payment method. You can also go into reports. And so under reports, you can create a custom report and you can see CSI vendor status. And that report you could filter by the state of the vendors or just simply click on view and see all the ones that are available. And if anything failed, then you can look at those vendors, drill down, and see why that failed. Typically, a vendor is going to fail because information that is required is missing, such as an email or phone number. Once you have vendors created and your banks created, you can now go ahead and start paying your bills. So now let's go pay some bills. From accounts payable, go to pay bills. In pay bills, you'll see a brand new option called payment provider. Standard is the default. You'll want to select CSI. You're only going to see banks that have been enabled for CSI and that have been approved. So you'll go through. The payment method will always default to selected by provider. Again, CSI is going to choose how to pay the bills based on the vendor's preference. We'll select USD bank currency. Bill currency is also USD if you have a multi-currency company. And then again, choose your bank. If you only have one bank enabled, then you'll only be allowed to choose that bank. And then finally, you'll go through and select the bills that you wish to pay. If there's any credits to apply, you would apply your credits and so forth. And then simply click on Pay Now. Once you click on Pay Now, the payments will be processed. So once you select your bills to pay, if you have an approval enabled, then you'll need to go through the approval cycle before those payments are submitted to CSI. So you'll go to Accounts Payable and click on Approve Payments. You'll choose the transactions that you wish to approve and click on Approve. Once those payments are approved, you can go ahead and view the payment request. And this is all part of the standard Sage Intacct workflow. So you'll notice that I've submitted a few payments here, and one is pending and one is request received. And then those transactions will then eventually switch over to processing. It takes just a few minutes for those payments to get processed. If there's additional approvals that need to happen, then those payments will not be submitted or delivered to CSI until they're finally approved. So when the payments are completed, you'll see in the History tab that they're completed, and then they'll eventually get posted to the General Ledger. So you can see exactly what's happening with those payments. The payments will then get updated with the payment method and finally posted to the General Ledger. If you go to the posted payments, you'll see how those transactions were paid. So in the posted payments, you'll see the payments I had previously processed. If we take a look, this was paid by check, and the check number is then updated. And under the History tab, we can see, all the history and when the payment went out. If we take a look at a virtual card, we'll see under the History tab that this card is currently blocked. It's expired, so because this card had not been used within the expired amount, it's currently blocked. If you need to generate any positive pay files, you can certainly do that as well by going to the Custom Report CSI Positive Pay. And that positive pay for any check payments you can run and send to your bank. And this will show you any transactions that have been generated. You'll want to make sure you wait until the check number is updated. So now that we've made a payment, let's take a look at what the vendor receives in the remittance. I have a remittance here that I've received, and it's to AirPath Wireless, and it's from HKCSI. And this is a virtual card, so in the virtual card remittance, you're going to actually get a virtual card with all the credit card numbers and the expiration and the CVC number and the total amount that is paid. So when the vendor goes to run this credit card in their payment processor, then they're going to want to run it or the full amount of that virtual card. So you don't want to run the card for less than the total amount. It's always for the full amount. Otherwise, it will get declined. And then if the payment method was a check or ACH, then it's going to look slightly different, but very similar. It'll say that the payment method is, check or ACH, and the payment is on its way. So if the vendor receives a check and they want to change their payment method, what's going to happen is CSI is going to reach out to them. They're going to attempt to phone them 3 times, and if they are unable to get a hold of them, then they're going to send them an email, and that email is going to then allow them to self-enroll into a different payment method other than check. So when they get that email to self-enroll, it'll look something similar to this. It'll say, such and such company is adopting a new payment platform. Do you want to enroll in virtual card? So virtual card is the preferred payment method, but they can opt to enroll in ACH as well. They'll click the link that says click here to register, and that'll then take them to this form. So they'll go ahead and they'll fill out their company name. It all defaults for them. They'll enter their information. Any DBA, tax ID, all that great, wonderful information. Does your company accept card payments for invoices? If they click yes, it's going to dynamically change, and they can choose what type of card they accept. They can choose MasterCard, Visa, other. They can choose all 3. And then, do you have any terms or fees accepting credit cards? If you say yes, then it'll say you cannot accept virtual cards if you have terms or fees at this time. And then it will say, if you're unable to accept card payments, you might consider ACH payments instead. So then it'll change, and then you can fill out your ACH information. If you say no up here, like if you say no, then it'll ask you, are you interested in getting set up to accept card payments? You can say yes, and again, it's going to ask you those same questions again, or you can click on no. And then it will ask you, do you want to accept ACH? And you can select yes, and then enter the bank information. So as you can see, you can enroll in either virtual card or ACH. And if you choose not to fill this out, then you're going to continue to receive a check payment. And then once you're all done, you're going to go ahead and click on that you have legal right to provide the bank information, enter your information, and click on done.